Hello and welcome to Transformations Café, where we're serving light as bold as love. I'm your host, Ken Marks. Transformations Café is brought to you by the Institute for Global Transformation. We're an all-volunteer nonprofit organization, and our vision is a world working together to utilize the power, love, and wisdom of higher consciousness to benefit humanity and the planet. Our mission is to support transformations in consciousness and in the way humanity interacts with one another so as to bring about positive change in the world individually and collectively. We invite you to please visit our website at theglobaltransformation.org. There are tons of resources and information there for you to peruse. And if you'd like to join our community, there's a join button at the top of each page. And there's also a donate button if you would please like to support our work, including programs like this one. As those of you who follow this program may recall, a couple of months ago, we had a guest exploring energy healing, Caitlin Adams, and that was primarily through modalities like Reiki therapy. Today, we're incredibly thrilled and honored to explore another modality of healing, which is sound healing. We have a very special guest this evening, Jonathan Goldman. So I'm going to read Jonathan's bio in a moment, but I also wanted to let people know that I was doing a little bit of research preparing for today, and up popped Jonathan's relatively recent interview on another program, also kind of in this same consciousness spirituality space on YouTube, Next Level Soul with Alex Ferrari. So congratulations, Jonathan, on being there. And I just would like to mention that too, that if anybody wants to hear more about your work, we're going to try not to overlap too much with what you shared with Alex that day, but that is another recent interview if people are interested. People also familiar with this program know that part of what IFGT is about is looking into and bringing more exposure to the ageless wisdom. And so there are certainly connections between sound healing and sound therapy with the wisdom. And so we'll try to explore some of that tonight as well. And one of the things that we're planning on doing is exploring how sound and sound healing can affect the planet and collective humanity. And that certainly is a part of the wisdom teachings as well. So with that, a little whetting of the appetite, let me read Jonathan's bio and then we'll get into it. Jonathan Goldman, MA, is an international authority and pioneer in the field of sound healing. He has been engaged in this field for over 45 years. And you shared with me earlier, Jonathan, you may be jealous because you used to be, you said, the #1 DJ in Orlando. He is the author of numerous books, including The 7 Secrets of Sound Healing. And Jonathan also shared just before we started recording that he has just completed the recording to make that an audio version of that book. So Jonathan will give you some time to discuss that with our audience, but congratulations on that. That sounds great. And other books include Chakra Frequencies and the best-selling book, The Humming Effect, which he co-authored with his wife, Andi Goldman. And that won the 2018 Gold Visionary Award for Health Books. His classic Healing Sounds has just had a special 30th anniversary edition released. Jonathan is director of the Sound Healers Association and president of Spirit Music, Inc. in Boulder, Colorado. A Grammy nominee, he has created over 25 best-selling award-winning recordings, and I've been listening to a lot of these, including CHAKRA CHANTS, The Divine Name with Gregg Braden, Frequencies, Sounds of Healing, REIKI CHANTS, and his latest, Sonic OASIS. Jonathan has been named as one of Watkins Mind Body Spirit magazine's 100 most spiritually influential living people. He's been inducted into the Massage Therapy Hall of Fame, and in 2023, Jonathan received the Distinguished Person of the Year Award from the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology for his, quote, pioneering contribution to the field of sound and energy. You can learn more about Jonathan and his work at healingsounds.com, and In preparation for today, Jonathan, you also shared a couple of other sites. We'll include all the URLs in the YouTube program notes, but the other sites, and I did have just a few minutes to look them over so far, but we have worldsoundhealingday.org and templeofsacredsound.org. So perhaps if we have time, we can launch into those. But with that, and welcome you, Jonathan Goldman. Pleasure meeting you, and welcome to Transformations Cafe.
Hello, everyone. It is a blessing to be here with you. Thank you so much for coming here tonight. I'm going to be sharing with you aspects of sound that I trust will contribute to making you have a happier, healthier life. And Ken, thank you for inviting me. In terms of ancient wisdom, I'd like to suggest that the use of sound as a healing modality may be among the most ancient wisdoms that there is. And in fact, this is a great lead-in for me to begin talking about what we call the 4 pillars of sound. We're going to talk about the 4 pillars of sound, and we're also going to talk about how we can use sound to shift and change not only our personal vibratory level, but the vibratory level of our beloved planet Earth. I'm going to do a little forward to this simply because, as Ken was saying, I just got done being in the recording studio doing my first audio book, and it's for a Hay House, and it's an audio of this book, The 7 Secrets of Sound Healing, which I wrote some years ago, and I was just so pleased to be doing this because I was really, the book is 20 years old. And there's nothing in it that isn't valid and relevant and really important. Some time ago, my wife Andi and I began teaching what we called the 4 pillars of sound healing. And we basically said, okay, what are these 4 pillars? And I hadn't looked at the 7 secrets of sound healing in a decade. So I kind of forgot a lot of what it was. And then I found out that the first 4 pillars were the first of the 7 secrets. So I share that with you. So talking about ancient wisdom, the first of the 4 pillars, first of the 7 secrets, whatever you like, is that everything is vibration. From the electrons moving around the nucleus of an atom to planets and distant galaxies moving around the sun, they are creating a vibration, and conceptually at least this vibration can be perceived of as a frequency. If you examine the different tenets of the different spiritual texts on our planet, you find that they have a commonality in that they understand that life, the universe, and everything was created solely through the power of vibration through sound. In the beginning was the Word, and the Lord said, let there be light. In ancient Egypt, the god Thoth would speak an object's name and bring it into manifestation. In the Hopi tradition, the spider woman would sing the song of creation over the inanimate forms on the planet and bring them into life. In fact, I was talking to Ken about the fact that my wife Andi and I do a sound satsang usually every month on our, video channel. And one of the times we just as an experiment, because when I wrote the book, there are probably a dozen different sources that I was able to track down about traditions that used sound, that understood that sound was the original creative force. And this time we stopped at 50. There were 50 different traditions: the Aboriginal tradition, the Dogon tradition in Africa. In the Far East, the gods and goddesses would ring a conch shell or blow a conch shell and ring a gong. In India, they say Nada Brahman, the world of sound. In fact, in the Vedas, it's written, in the beginning was a Brahman with whom was the sound, and the sound was Brahman. So all these different traditions, understanding that sound is the basic creative force. And of course, modern quantum physicists say the same thing. Michio Kaku, one of the great quantum physicists who deals with the whole multidimensional level of different worlds, says that, everything is music. And I perceive that this is very, very true. So once again, let me talk a minute about sound. Sound travels as a waveform. This wave is measured in what they call cycles per second, or it's hertz. So if something has 100 waves per minute, that is 100 cycles a second, 100 hertz. We hear from around 16 of these cycles a second, 16 hertz, to around 20,000, but I'm going to be truthful with you kids. If you're over 16 or 18 years old, you don't hear that high. You hear about 16,000, so our hearing gets less and less and less. It's like that. But just because we can't hear something doesn't mean that there isn't a sound. Our finny friends in the ocean, the dolphins, can make and receive sounds upwards of 180,000 cycles a second. That's more than 10 times our highest level of hearing. And the dolphins may be exchanging information about the best route through the Bering Strait, or recipes for tuna noodle casserole, or perhaps they're communicating with each other about information from the mysterious star system. Now there ain't nothing happening. We can't hear it, but to dolphins, there's perhaps encyclopedic information that is being exchanged. So once again, just because we can't hear something doesn't mean that there isn't a sound. As noted, from the electrons moving around the nucleus of an atom to planets and distant galaxies moving around their sun, they're all in motion, and if they're in motion, they're creating a vibratory field. Everything is in motion, including our body. Every organ, every bone, every tissue, every part of their body is in a state of vibration. And when we're in a state of health, we say we're in sound health. Where, if you like, this wonderful overall orchestra that is playing the symphony of the self. But what happens if the second violin player loses their sheet music? They begin to play out of tune, out of harmony. Pretty soon, the entire string section sounds off. Pretty soon, the entire orchestra is actually sounding off. And this is metaphorically akin to if a part of our body has lost its natural, healthy, harmonic, resonant frequency. It begins to vibrate out of ease, out of harmony, and we say it is dis-ease. So the very simple and yet profound concept of using sound for healing is simply that something has lost its vibrational resonance, and if we can somehow give this string player back their sheet music, it'll restore this orchestra back to its health and balance. Now, this idea of restoring the organ back to its primary harmonic resonant rate, if you like, its healthy frequency, it's not only found in sound therapy, sound healing. It's the basis of everything from acupuncture, chronotherapy, chromotherapy, light, chiropractic, osteopathic traditions, acupuncture. They all have this concept of bringing things back to their normal, healthy, resonant frequency. Now, this idea of using sound as a healing modality has two basic aspects. One is psychoacoustics. Sound affects us psychoacoustically, meaning that it goes into our ears, into our brain, affecting our nervous system, our heart rate, our respiration. The other one is called vibroacoustics, and that's where sound goes into our body, affecting us on a cellular level. Give you an example. If I take these two wonderful tuning forks, hit them together, and listen to them like this, which you probably can't hear, something like that, but this is psychoacoustics. And this is affecting my energy field. I hear it, it's a beautiful sound, and give thanks for that. Psychoacoustics. This, putting the tuning fork on my body, and I can feel the vibrations in my body. This is vibroacoustics. Now, most of the time when we work with music and listening to music, for example, that's a psychoacoustic phenomena. Our voice, in fact, most of the time, as we're listening to it, affects us psychoacoustically. But, for example, if you apply some sort of sound to the body that's vibroacoustic, that may be, there's a lot of information now about how sound affects the brains, and the brains, our brain waves, etc., and does this and that, and that's wonderful. But the power of sound, one of the great ways that sound heals, is through being applied to the body, literally changing the frequency of imbalanced organs. Here's a quote from the New York Times. New York Times Science section, February 8th, 1988. I happen to remember it because it had a lot of 8s. Sound, shaped into dazzling tool, can make, break, or rearrange molecular structure. Drum roll. Rearrange molecular structure. Then the last tag is, and levitate objects. That gets into a whole another realm I'm not going to get into right now, but just the idea that you can rearrange molecular structure with sound. People often say, well, what sort of conditions can be cured by sound or healed by sound? And I say conceptually, and this is just conceptual, but conceptually, if you can rearrange molecular structure, what can't you conceptually change? Okay. And just one last thought. Since most sound affects the body in certain ways and the ears, and most imbalanced energy, things cause blockages in the body which become, quote, diseased. If we can somehow release the disease through sound, we can affect a healing. So that's a very important thing. The second secret, now the first one is everything is vibration. The second one is that intent is powerful. Back in the 1980s, I was working on a master's degree program for Lesley University in using sound for healing. I had collected a pile of papers that were this high, hundreds. And coming from a family of doctors, father, grandfather, brother, all medical doctors, I had a pretty well-developed left brain. And I was going to basically put these all together and come up with the encyclopedia of sound healing. What frequency, what mantra healed what condition. And I was sitting in front of my computer. Some of you kids may remember DOS operating systems. That's, you know, so here was, so here was this dark screen with amber letters waiting for me to encode information, and I basically started putting and correlating all these different systems of using sound that I'd gotten, because I'd been now studying everything for at least 5 years, and I was really, really passionate about it. But as I began correlating this information, nothing actually agreed. You'd have spiritual master A who was using one particular mantra, and spiritual master B using a totally different mantra to resonate the same chakra. Or they could be using the same mantras for different chakras. You'd have Dr. X who is using a particular frequency for an organ, Dr. Y using a completely different set of frequencies for the same organ. And I was sitting there, I went over page after page, and it wasn't in agreement. I was sitting there with my head in my hands, in a state, if you like, of intellectual angst. And I had my head in my hands, and I was really freaking, if you like. How could this be? How could this be? And I heard this voice say, it is not only the frequency of the sound that creates the effect, it is also the intention of the person making and receiving the sound. And I was like, wow, all of a sudden illumination occurred. And on this computer with the amber letters, I wrote the words frequency plus intent equals healing. Let me say that again. Frequency plus intent equals healing. Frequency, if you like, is the sound. Intent is the consciousness that is encoded upon the sound. And healing, of course, is what, if you like, we like to think of as restoring to balance, etc. But this concept of intentionality at the time was huge. I began talking to these different scientists and doctors that I was associating with, saying, have you ever thought of the importance of intentionality? And they'd look at me and go, no. Actually, they would look at me and go, no, and look at me like I was a man from outer space, which I might be, but they weren't supposed to know it. And it was very, very difficult talking to people about intentionality. And then lo and behold, 10, 20 years later, you have Wayne Dyer doing a PBS program on the power of intent. You have Bruce Lipton writing a book on the biology of belief. You got Joe Dispenza. You are the placebo. You have Lynn McTaggart doing her intention experiments. How many of you have seen the photographs of Masaru Emoto?
Yes.
Takes water, freezes it, photographs it. Water that has basically been exposed to positive vibrations, positive intentionality, looks like a snowflake. Water that has been exposed to negative vibrations, negative sound, looks like mud. And my favorite of those is a picture of water from the Fujiwara Dam in Japan. Polluted water. Looks like mud. Dr. Emoto had a Zen Buddhist priest chant what is called the Heart Sutra, Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisvaha, over this water for 20 minutes, rephotographed it, and it looks clear. In my presentations, I would show this and say, hey, how much of our body is made up of water? How much of the planet is made up of water? If we can use sacred sound is sound that is encoded with the intention of positive vibrations, is this perhaps not a way that we cannot heal the planet and heal ourselves? I'm going to talk for just a moment about the fact that our conversational voice can be used for healing. All we have to do is encode positive intent upon it. Too often we use the voice as an instrument for anger and destruction, but if we can generate compassion and kindness, I'm sure you all are aware of heart-brain coherence, but if you aren't, I'm just going to simply say that the heart and the brain and the heart, both put out a vibratory field. When this vibratory field, this electromagnetic field, is in sympathetic resonance, if they're vibrating together, then our normal electromagnetic field gets anywhere from 50 to to 500 to 5,000 times greater. And we can literally work using this to amplify our own field, work with other people, and actually, as I'll be talking about later, interfacing with the field of the planet. Now, the key ingredient of this, I just share this with you, because it's sound-oriented, it's vibratory relation, so if it's a vibration, it's a sound on a level. The key to this is simply taking some nice deep breaths in, and then bringing your attention to your heart. And as you do that, think of something that you feel gratitude and appreciation for. And then I add the element of sound, because that amplifies it even further. But if you can get into a state of heart-brain coherence, it's fabulous. I just shared that with you. That comes from something called heart math, and they're definitely worthwhile checking out. Many years ago,
This is the
excuse me?
this is the Heart Math Institute you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, the dedication to this is to our dear beloved friend Sarah Benson, who is the woman who first initiated me into sound. And it says, to Sarah Benson, who taught me that the true sound of healing is love. I want to say that again because it's so profoundly powerful. At the time she first said it, which was 30, 40 years ago, I thought how hokey, and I realized how important it was. The true sound of healing is love. And love, my friends, is not a frequency. I'm sorry. If you believe it's a frequency, then any mother who's holding a baby singing, cooing a lullaby, if she's got to look at her guitar tuner or whatever to make sure she's singing the right frequency, something is really off with our planet. So it's not in my belief system. If you think about it, you can generate love without looking or hitting a specific tuning fork or whatever. I do that as a side because I think it's so important for us to not get locked in to the idea of specific frequencies having emotional content. Okay. 3, the third pillar is we are all unique vibratory beings. Well, you can't speak, but if you could raise your hand if this is true and whatever happens. Anybody here allergic to penicillin? Okay, so I think I saw 3 out of maybe 12. That's totally within the mark, because usually when I ask that, you'll get about 80% of an audience, maybe 90% not being allergic. You'll have 10 to 20% being allergic. I say, okay, if everything in the universe is vibration, then penicillin as an energy form is a vibration, which it is. It might be a series of vibrations, but it is that. And for 80% of you, it's a healing vibration. But for 20% or 15, whatever, it's going to be a toxic vibration. Now, this is a metaphor for everything that I know of, because I have never found personally anything that works for everyone. Whether it's a food or a supplement or a pharmaceutical or whatnot, you're just not going to get 100%. And this is great, because that means we can honor our own uniqueness. We are all a little bit different. Nobody is the same. The more and more I research this, I see that nobody is the same, and we know this. So therefore, this idea that we are all unique vibratory beings, and what works for one person may not work for another person. It's that simple, but needs to be really honored, because as this field of sound grows more and more, there are people just coming out with different frequencies all over the time. This is the frequency for this, and this is the frequency of that. Now, if we're able to encode belief onto a frequency, then it will have an effect. But the whole thing is, I don't want it to be a self-limiting thing that if you want the frequency of love, you need this to be you need to be listening to this, you need to use this and that. How can that be? Once again, working with the whole heart-brain coherence, which deals with compassion and gratitude. It's a feeling, it's a breath, it's a state of being in gratitude and kindness and appreciation. And, I mean, no offense, but you can listen to a frequency, and if you're ticked off at somebody, you're not going to be generating love. It's just that simple. So we're all unique vibratory beings. What works for someone may not work for us. And if it works for us, then we honor it. We honor it. Okay, you have an experience with sound. You can say, hey, I had this experience with sound, and I loved it, and it's going to do that for me. But it may not do that for someone else. And that's wondrous, because we then honor how different sounds, different things affect us, and honor our uniqueness, which really allows us to sample the extraordinary spectrum of sound that is. It's like there's a whole spectrum of sound. Do you think the divine wanted to go, yes, well, this is the spectrum, this is the only spectrum that you need? I don't think so. You can be very self-limiting, but as I like to tell a lot of students, let's expand and incorporate. If something works for you, great. If it doesn't, great. And you can tell somebody else. Here, just as a question, have you ever had a friend go to a doctor and say, this is the best doctor I ever had, you got to go to him. And you go to the doctor and go, I don't like this guy at all, or this woman at all. And it's like there was nothing necessarily wrong with the doctor, but there wasn't that correct resonance. A fellow by the name of Herbert Benson, back in Boston, wrote a book a long time ago called The Relaxation Response. And in it, he had 3 elements of Tibetan medicine, which are very cool, because Tibetans are pretty cool people. And it was first the belief in the healer in the medicine, the belief in the person being healed in the healer, and, drumroll, the karma between the two. I love that. The karma, what is that, vibration? There's some sort of resonance that either works or doesn't work. And I think that's so important. We are all unique, and that's just one of the phenomena. And then I'll get to the last of these 4 pillars, which is silence is golden. This is my wife Andi's favorite. It took me about 30 years of being in the field of sound healing before I really realized it, the power of sound. Because when you first get into sound, you're so enamored by the power of sound. You're so enamored with your voice or with these instruments, which do work. I mean, they're great, but they're just not the be-all and end-all, because also we need to honor silence. Silence is where the true shift and change occurs. It is, if you like, the yin to the yang of sound. It's such a sacred place, and we have, particularly in this modern era, become so distracted by so many different things, we don't get into that space of silence. And as I said, it's the place where the mojo happens, the magic happens. And oftentimes I'll be, for example, working with a tone, or working with a mantra or something with a group of people, and we'll be chanting it or listening to it for a while, and then we get into silence, and after a minute or two, all of a sudden, the silence begins to infiltrate, and It allows the vibrations, the mantra, the sound that we had to actually take us to higher planes of consciousness. There is a yogic tradition called Shabd Yoga, audible sound current yoga, where people go within, they listen to the audible sounds, and they travel to higher planes of consciousness. Did you know that the word silent and the word listen are anagrams?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, then, blessed be. And
It's interesting because this has come up several times in things I've listened to recently. So
oh,
there's
great.
a reason. There's a reason.
Hmm.
I think this was the science question you were referring to. He says this: sound needs a medium to vibrate, like molecules of our atmosphere. If you hit those two tuning forks together in the vacuum of space, there's no sound. The forks still vibrate. So where does the frequency go?
You know, I've read physics stuff that says that there is actually vibrations occurring. I don't know. This gets into a quantum level of consciousness that I don't have an explanation. Really good question, Michael, and I have no answer for that. Where does the sound go?
One is I'm interested to know when we look at, let's say, sound or music in this case, that my question relates to how it can or does or does not elevate consciousness. And do you have any thoughts or, insights, revelations about the various decades of music that we've been living through, at least, those of us in this conversation, and how that has affected, obviously a lot of different forms, everything from jazz, blues, rock and roll, rap, whatever. But pop, how do you see it affecting consciousness in a general decade way?
Brilliant question. I got to start out by saying I am a child of the Woodstock Nation. And I'm going to honor Woodstock for a second because I was there and there were more people there than were reported. They were in the
I was there.
Were you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hey, all right. Do you remember when Swami Satchidananda led everybody in chanting at the very, very beginning?
I wasn't there then. I
Okay.
arrived a little bit late.
Yeah, I am convinced that it was that caused that event to have really no violence, and it was, if you like, just think about it. That was August 16th and 17th, and that was actually 1969. You jump ahead 20 years to 1987, August 16th and 17th, and you have the harmonic convergence. Anybody remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that there are waveforms that happened. And you can use, if you like, groups of people who are focused on using love and kindness together. I mean, Woodstock was an amazing phenomenon. I have to,
Incredible. And, interesting you brought up about Satchidananda, because the other part, remember, said I have a two-part question. I didn't quite know how to relate it. But the other part of my question to you is, like, I've heard so many times, like, Om is encompasses all the sounds of the universe. And then you brought up about Satchidananda and chanting. And so I don't know I don't really know about that. I've chanted Om, probably every day of my life, but any thoughts of that? And you're already talking about how it comes together.
well, I believe that there are certain seed syllables that are most effective in groups to transmit consciousness. And this is actually jumping in to the seventh secret, which is sound can change the world. And I will say that one day a year for the last 24 years, Valentine's Day, we have basically, it's an event called World Sound Healing Day. And we basically, and I'll be talking about this momentarily, but we have people throughout the planets, thousands of people throughout the planets, intoning an om or an ah sound, or even a hum. I like the hum very much. I'm not going to work with it tonight per se, but it's a great sound, and it's a sound that everybody can make. And in the Vedic tradition, I found out, actually, I have to get out of this, Swami Satchidananda. We were teaching at his ashram called Yogaville. And I walked in one day there when we were teaching, and there was his Yoga Sutras. And I just opened it up, and it's a thick book. Yoga Sutras are the basis of all yoga, done by a fellow by the name of Patanjali's. And this is Swami Satchidananda's translation of it. And I just happened to open the page, and it said, and this is my translation of his thing, which is a little longer. It said, the original sound of creation was pranava, the humming of prana. They had to give it a name, so they called it Om. So the Om comes from the hum. So there are certain primordial sounds that I think are the essence. In fact, I have a recording called Cosmic Hum that's very, very cool, and you listen to it, and I had one of the heart math directors tell me that he and this woman named Lynn McTaggart, who does the intention experiments, they had a room full of business people, 100 business people or so from different countries. They wanted to get them all in heart-brain coherence, and they didn't know what to do, so they put on this cosmic hum that I had, and the people listened to it, and they all naturally sort of vibrated and got into a state of resonance together and into heart coherence. So I like to think that using sound, and I'm not going to say it's any specific sound, any specific frequency, but something that recording that I used was certainly encoded with the energy of love and compassion, because that's one of the things that I do when I finish a recording, is I sit in meditation ritual working with crystal energy and whatnot, and try to encode the energies and ask the, if you like, devas, the divine beings, to come onto the sound. But that is workable. So that didn't answer your question at all, except to try to give you a little overall gestalt of the fact that there probably are usually single tone sounds. When I say single frequency, in other words, if you have something like a mantra like Om Namah Shivaya, which is a wonderful mantra, but that is not a tone. I'm talking about Om or Ah. In fact, Ah is one of the great heart sounds of our time. It's when you work with the mantras, it seems to be almost a universal heart sound. We could all try it here if you want to feel. Put your hand on your heart and just go, ah, ah. You all want to try that for a second? Just see if you can feel it. And ah. I mean, I can feel it vibrating. It's not vibrating like that. It's very different. There's a different sound for the crown center. But the heart is also found, the heart sound ah is also found in all the different god and goddess names on the planet. Buddha, Krishna, Yaheshua, the ancient name of Jesus, Tara, Wakantanka. I could go on, because you find this elongated vowel sound of ah found in all these different traditions. So there's something going on. There's a natural resonance with these that I think is very important.
Like this phenomenon, I'm looking at the modern of Taylor Swift. Do you hear and I don't know her music that well, but certainly younger generations, they're like mesmerized that do you hear anything in the intonations in that music in particular that makes it such a power phenomenon as it is in our worldwide society?
I acknowledge that she has some sort of extraordinary power to do this. I've watched some minutes of her show, and she really resonates with a lot of the young people, particularly a lot of the young women. And I'm going to honor it. And her music is okay. It doesn't resonate deeply with me, is all I can say.
But I wonder if that, Jonathan, goes back to uh, the second pillar, which is intent, because I think a lot of the reason that her message comes through, and I think it might also overlap with your original question, Diane, that it's not just the sound and the music and the melody and the harmonies, it's the intent that her lyrics and the stories that she shares that I think is why she has struck such a frequency with so many people.
You mean like more on an emotional frequency than something like not like a higher consciousness. I don't get it that way, but it's definitely something. But I think maybe it is, that's what it is, what you're saying, Ken, the
Yeah,
emotional.
I think it, but it's her, but her intent is to relate as a person to her audience and share the stories of heartbreak and
Yes.
other things that really comes through, and the music helps to get that through. But I think a lot of music, especially popular music, can just be about the sound and the melody and the harmonies and the beats, and the spaces in between, because that's part of the silence. And how if you've got any musical background, which I have a thimbleful, but I do remember when I was taking drum lessons that the rests in the drumming and the music were just as important as any notes or percussion that was being played. And so I think this intent of what it is that you're trying to get across, and when you can hear the lyrics, and when people know the lyrics, I think that is very powerful. I mentioned, I think before we started recording, I had the very great luxury and benefit of seeing John Legend live last night, and he did his song "All of Me Loves All of You" for an encore, and that was so powerful because the entire theater audience was singing along in great voice to it. And it just really made the experience all the more powerful. And of course, it's a beautiful tune and melody, but it was also such powerful lyrics. And anyone that's had the joy of knowing the love for someone else, and you hear those lyrics, and it just that's the intent, and it really comes across. So thought I'd add that.
Nice, Ken. Well, she is really extraordinarily talented. And I have voted for her in the Grammys. So, I mean, out of all the people of a particular genre, I'll go, she writes the best song, she's got the best hooks and all this other stuff. It's still not particularly, for me, doesn't resonate real strongly with me. But that just because I don't listen to it, I'd rather listen to the Beatles because I'm just an old-fashioned guy. We were talking about intention, and I said that, one of Sinatra's great abilities was that he could really project sound and intentionality on the sound. I never personally thought that he was the greatest vocalist there is, but I know that when he sang when he was 17, it was a very good year. You believed him. That's the whole thing. You believed him. And it might have been, I don't know if, this stuff, but he just had that ability to convey emotions on to the sound. I think that was one of his keys. Because there are a lot of people who sing perfectly and yet they don't move you. Why? Is it because they're projecting intentionality? I thought.
Or not.
Or
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
Exactly.
right.
And as a guitar player, I have seen fellows who are technically perfect, and they did so much less than a person who might be hitting just a couple of notes and yet playing brilliantly, like George Harrison or whatnot. But then again, that's just my thoughts. Everyone has different beliefs and different things that work for them, and we have to honor this. I think one of the things that we're going to learn about, because it's true, it's the field generator being created by the sound. In other words, the sound not only creates the person making the sound doesn't just do something that's part of the song, but it's also creating an energetic field. And the energetic field, maybe that's what Taylor Swift is able to do when she sings and does it, and she gets this audience of 100,000 people, and she's creating the field. And right now, we just think of it as an auditory response, but maybe there's an energetic response that is much greater, and we simply don't yet have the instrumentation. A psychic might be able to see this type of stuff. And every individual is going to be very different. Every individual is going to have a different resonance with the creation of the field, which leads me into the seventh secret of sound healing. We can change the world with our sound. Or maybe sound can change the world. But it's the idea that I was in deep meditation about 20 some odd years ago, 25 years ago. And I was asking, I speak to beings from time to time. It's okay. They usually give me good advice. I don't give thanks on that. Sitting there meditating. This voice was saying, okay, one of your assignments was to help bring awareness of sound to heal on a personal level to this planet. And you've done that. Keep doing it. Great. Now your next assignment is to help bring sound to the planet for planetary healing, to change the field of the planet. And I thought, oh my goodness gracious, that sounds great. How do you do it? And transmission got cut off. So I had to figure it out myself. And I realized that probably it had something to do with sound, and that it had to do with organizing people to do a sound at a particular time with the same intent, and probably the sound had to be a simple sound, like an ah, or an om, or a hu, one of these basic one-syllable sounds that is a primordial sound. And we organized World Sound Healing Day, where people would sound at, I think we work with 12 o'clock New York noontime, and had people throughout the planet doing it. And here's what's interesting. Shortly after we did our first World Sound Healing Day, I became familiar with something called the Global Consciousness Project. Do you all know about that at all?
Yes.
The Global Consciousness Project was created by a friend of mine named Roger Nelson out of Princeton University. And what they did was that they basically, there's something called a random number generator. It's a computer program that just spits out zeros and ones, equal amount of zeros, equal amount of ones. It's like flipping a coin. 100 times, you get 50 heads, 50 tails, for the most part. Random number generator, out of 100, you get 50 zeros, 50 ones. But he found that when people meditated, and they meditated generating compassion and love and kindness together, it affected the random numbers. There were no longer 50 zeros, 50 ones. It was different. It was literally, the numbers were askew, and he was able to chart that. And he began charting different events. And what he found was that events of high compassion were able to affect this field. Not events of high excitement, but events of high compassion. Now, my friend Gregg Braden, who is a wonderful being, and I highly suggest you check out his work. But years ago, he came up with the idea that in order for us to actually really affect the field of the planet, we needed 8,000 8,000 individuals. We needed the square root of 1% of the population, or 8,000 people. And I think that's about right. Now, you go, well, there's more than 8,000 people in a peace march, or in a, I've seen some huge gatherings lately. We can just look in the news, and there are hundreds of thousands or millions of people doing that stuff. Why have they not been able to change the field? Because for the most part, their consciousness is not to generate love, to be, Diane, I think we changed the field at Woodstock.
The field was so powerful that love was omnipresent.
Right.
And no matter where, I'm sure you experienced, wherever you walked, no matter what was going on, from the most, quote, normal to the crazies in the wild. And it was just a pure love field.
Yes, and I'm going to just interject and say that years later, when I consciously had a heart-opening experience, my first comment was, this is Woodstock. All right, let me continue. let me just continue with the idea that so we can create a field, but the field has got to be, if you're picketing against something, if you're doing a peace conference and you're screaming no more war, that doesn't do it, because that's not generating the energy of love and compassion. And that's one of the whole things of why we oftentimes, when we do World Sound Healing Day, and I have actually a little free, I think, week-long training that people can try before they make the sound, but we teach making the sound, creating heart-brain coherence, encoding the sound with that energy and putting it out of the planet. And what's interesting is the Global Consciousness Project, courtesy of, at the time, Roger Nelson, and now the HeartMath people are working with it. They've charted it, and what should be a straight line looks like Mount Everest, because something is going on. A small group of people are somehow able to create a field that interfaces with the Gaia matrix. And this, so we can all do this. We can all do this on a daily basis, if you like, on a weekly basis. Join with people, put your hearts together, and make a sound with the intention of feeding the field of the planet to raise the evolution of all sentient beings. Wow, what if we could do that? From my perspective, working with the energy of compassion, which I think is the most powerful energy that we can have, working with the energy of compassion, people can get together and start working together, and working together, we get a phenomena of 1 + 1 = 3. And then you get a synergistic effect, and we can shift and change all the different problems that we have on this planet by working together. It's that simple and that hard, because right now there are forces that are trying to divide us. There are forces that are doing their very best to divide us, because you know what? Working with fear and anger is the easiest way of controlling people. And if you don't want to be controlled, don't be divided. Listen to the other person, regardless of what they're saying. Don't make them wrong, and say, okay, you got your point. I don't agree with you, but that's all right. I don't have to argue or fight with you. We can just work together. Does this make sense? It's so mandatory. It's so mandatory. I like the Tibetan Buddhist tradition a lot. I'm not really a Buddhist, but I like their artwork at least, and I work with Tibetan monks, so I don't know. I work with all the different traditions on the planet, Christianity, all that. They work with the energy of heart. Jesus, man, what a extraordinary heart being was being generated then. Maybe the religions that manifested from them, the churches and whatnot, are not necessarily generating the heart energy that these different mystical masters and divine beings did. But their innate teachings were ultimately the golden rule: do unto others as you have do unto yourself. That compassionate thing. Have compassion for yourself. Have compassion for others. We can make a difference. And particularly with our light, our love, and our sound, we can change the world. Ken, that sounds like a good time, a good line for me to get off, unless there's any questions.
There's some things I wonder if you could maybe leave us with just something that we can each do individually, which then becomes collective. Because I
All
think
right.
when you wake up and if you are trapped by that, look at your phone first thing when you wake up, or you hear the headlines and it immediately sets a different tone and frequency for the day than perhaps something else that we could do to create a different foundation.
You got it. I have to put in a plug first for the humming effect, because we're going to do some humming, kids. Okay? I've worked with sound from all sorts of different traditions, from Tibetan overtone chanting to Mongolian shamanic chanting to X, Y, or Z. And I've tried to teach that to people, and it's great. But oftentimes, we're living in a place where, thanks to American Idol and whatnot, that people have gotten even more judgmental about their voice than normal. Words like pitchy and whatnot, we listen to somebody to see if they're singing in tune or out of tune. That's great, except that really causes us to have constricted throat chakras and makes us fearful making sound in public and particularly in private with ourselves. We just judge ourselves. So Andi and I were talking, we said, oh God, we need to find a sound that people aren't judgmental about, that everybody can do, that people don't have any hidden agendas. We looked at each other and we went, As we dove deeper and deeper into the subject of humming, it was extraordinary. It was extraordinary. We said, okay, this is going to be the first commercially available book that's solely dedicated to the hum. What can we do so people take it seriously? So, okay, the first chapter's got to be nothing more or less than what they call peer-reviewed information on the power of the hum, on the physiological effects. You get increased oxygen in your cells, you get increased lymphatic circulation, you get increased levels of melatonin, you get reduced levels of stress-related hormones, you get release of endorphins, which are those wonderful self-created opiates that work as natural pain relievers. You get, and here's a big drum roll, you get lowered blood pressure and heart rate. I have what is called white coat syndrome. I get into the doctor's office and I'm like, and my blood pressure is really high. I was there yesterday, as a matter of fact. And I sort of dropped 20, 30 points. You can use this is a technique called conscious humming. I'm going to lead you all in a minute. But we call it conscious humming. It's very specific in terms of ways of doing it. And you can lower your heart rate and respiration within like 30 seconds. So if you're stressed out, which everybody is, just do a few hums, such as I'm going to lead you in, and it'll work. It's so important. Also, you get increased levels of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It loosens up your circulatory system. So basically, stuff flows much better through your veins. How cool. And nitric oxide is also an antiviral agent. It basically generates 13 to 15 times the amount of nitric oxide in your nasal cavity, which can kill a lot of the critters. Finally, you also get, I think I might have mentioned, the release of oxytocin, which is your trust hormone, and you get, a lot of people are interested in vagal toning in the vagus nerve. And basically, one of the reasons why your heart rate and respiration go down and your blood pressure does is because your vagus nerve, which works with the autonomic nervous system, basically that gets to a point of what they call vagal toning, and it is a really state of deep relaxation. So you get indeed what they call heart rate variability that occurs when you do this conscious humming. You got to take a breath, because there was a lot of stuff about what the hum does, and it does. It's real. It's real. And it's so easy. It's so profound and simple. And we're going to do it in a minute. But there are some protocols that I want to share with you. Okay? First, you want to check yourself out before you do it, because that's always important to know where you are versus where you're going to go. Next one is, I want you to hum with your lips closed. Humming is the most powerful vibroacoustic sound that we can make. It creates the most resonance in the cranium and in the chest. That's because when you open your mouth, the sound energy goes out. So if you want to contain the sound energy, you keep your lips closed. You hum on one note. You don't want to do the 1812 Overture or Flight of the Bumblebee or whatnot, or a Taylor Swift song. You just want to basically hum on one note. You want to make it a comfortable note that's in your vocal range, okay? A lot of people are looking for the, oh, I want to find, my frequency is, what note is it? Usually it's somewhere in your vocal range. That's the tone that you've been born with and that you've been resonating with for your entire life. We're going to hum a minimum of 3 to 5 times. And then we want to be in silence for an equal amount of time. And of course, you want to do deep and relaxed belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. That's a key. That's a key. Deep and relaxed belly breathing. So I'm going to say again, you check yourself out. Deep and relaxed breath. Keep your lips closed. You hum on one note. You hum on a comfortable pitch. You hum for about 3 to 5 times, and then you're in silence. Are we ready? Everybody there? Okay, so let's first check yourself out. What are you feeling? And then take a nice couple of deep breaths and just and now if you would, we'll do 3 or 4 hums together and see if that see what that feels like, okay? So take a nice deep breath in. And the first of 3 or 4 hums. Now taking another nice deep breath in. And you don't have to match my pitch at all, please. And another breath in. And one more breath. Breathing in and now just being in silence, checking yourself out. Do you feel any different? I hope so. I can tell you that I am rather pleasantly blissed, mildly high from just doing those 4 hums together with you. So I'm trusting that we all felt a little bit of something going on. And I'm talking now just because we could be in silence, and that would be the thing to do. But I want to suggest that if you did like this experience, try it on your own and go for 5 minutes, but be in silence 5 minutes after, because let me tell you, if you hum for 5 minutes and try to stand up, you may pitch over, honest to goodness. And a 5-minute humming experience can be an advanced, actually, in the yogic tradition, it's called Brahmari Pranayama, and it's a very advanced yogic exercise. I'm going to stop for a moment and just say, how many of you felt something?
No question that for me, the experience was not just kind of deeply relaxing and kind of also got a little high, but the nature of the humming changed with each repetition. And the first 2 or 3, I was not able to sustain as long as you were. The last one I went, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds longer. And
Great.
It just flowed. So it was, yeah, there's definitely something to it, and felt something kind of coming through. So that's powerful. And just, maybe the clue to remember before our brains get too engaged in the morning, you can give a little hint and say, there was something else I was going to do. maybe that alone would, we just say, maybe that'll be the clue.
It can help you wake up. It can look, you get increased levels of melatonin, which is great for sleep, so it can help you sleep. Or if you wake up in the middle of the night doing that, you want to chill out. I mean, it's an amazing phenomena. We only did 4 of these in a fairly rushed situation, but at the same time, it's something I really wanted to leave you with, because it's something you can do on a daily basis, and you can share with your spouse, with your children, with your friends, because everybody is so stressed out, and you don't have to buy $100 or $1,000 machine to reduce your stress. You can just hum, and it'll do it. It's that
Great.
powerful and that profound.
Jonathan, anything else that you would like to share, or just can remind folks that your website, healing, was it? It's
HealingSounds.com.
healingsounds.com. Yeah.
And World Sound Healing Day is great. I create if you all are either on Spotify or Amazon or Apple Music or even on YouTube, you can find my different recordings, and I spend a lot of time creating what for me are the right tones, frequencies. To me, it's sacred sound. If sound is done right, you can work together. That'll shift and change vibratory fields, heal people, etc., and etc. And I do use different frequencies that are supposedly scientifically validated, but I don't think it really matters. I think, once again, the energetics are there, and it might work for you, and if it doesn't, that's okay. I got lots of different things. I could spend the next whatever telling you the different stories about creating, how I create these different things. There used to be these things called albums, and after that, even CDs, where I have a 32-page liner note on one of my albums, because there's that much information, because it was really thought about, and then we put the chi and the emotion and the love in there to boot, which I think is one of the keys from my perspective. And once again, as I said before, we heal the planet, we heal ourselves. We heal ourselves and we heal the planet. We can make a difference, and we have a choice. Thank you all so much for staying with me now. You're lovely, lovely beings, and I just am really delighted to have been able to share with you. Ken, thank you for having manifested such a delightful cosmic choir.
I hope we stay in touch.
You betcha. Blessings
And
to
I'm
all
looking
of you.
forward to the audio book. Do you know when it's going to be released?
January,
Oh, very good.
which is a whole lot faster as a last minute thing. I am currently I finished that and something else. What came in was the final edits to a new book that I'm doing called Ascension Harmonics. But that won't be out until July of 2026. So, but that's also very good. So listen, healingsounds.com. If you can, visit it. We got lots of free downloads and stuff like that. And it's been a blessing, everyone. I'm going to have dinner now. Thank you.